And today we're unpacking one of the most ambitious defense initiatives on the table, and that's America's Golden Dome Defense Program.
We'll explore how it works technically, which companies are building it, and how it's reflected in the defense budget, and most importantly, what it means for the future of defense innovation. Before we dive into the Golden Dome, let's kick things off with June's biggest headlines from the 2025 Paris Air Show, where defense and commercial innovation shared the center stage. Number one, Airbus puts on a strong showing. Airbus revealed a stealth drone designed for electronic warfare and ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions in contested environments. Airbus also dominated the show, announcing 500 plus aircraft orders, including A320neo family jets and its A350-1000. Notably, Indian carrier Akasa Air placed a $12 billion order alone. Northrop Grumman and SpaceX secure Pentagon contracts. Northrop Grumman expands its role in resilient satellite communications, and SpaceX will lead the launch services for the National Defense Space Architecture, Tranche 3. Boeing's X-66A hypersonic test platform cleared for trials. The X-66A will help validate maneuverability and survivability in hypersonic flight regimens. India and France launched a maritime satellite program, a dual-use program for surveillance and disaster response. This program will be reinforcing the global partnerships in the defense space. And lastly, the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Partnership accelerates. Both Boeing and Airbus emphasize SAF as a part of their net zero emission strategies. Airbus announced a SAF testing partnership with Nest and Total Engines, while Boeing highlighted its 100% SAF capable demonstrator goals by 2030.
Yeah, and this wasn't just a defense heavy year. Commercial aviation made a massive rebound, and these numbers signal a post-pandemic confidence is back, and the next-gen aircraft demand is just surging. So especially in the Asia and the Middle East. What really jumps out to me from the newsreel is this India-France launch maritime satellite program. I think we're going to see a lot more of these strategic partnerships from various countries, advancing some really great technology as it moves forward. DeWayne, anything that jumps out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I echo that, but if you think about that region itself, Europe and Asia, there's so many, we want to call them second and third tier countries that are really just tipping the iceberg on jumping into full-fledged on what they can do from satellites perspective, from space perspective. And so they are getting to their next step, if you will. And it's really positive seeing that. And we're definitely going to need to see more of these partnerships, particularly from a defense perspective in the space environment. So very pleased to see that.
Yeah, and not only that, like you said, we've seen a lot of defense-heavy programs focus in our podcast lately, but I think this SAF partnership is also something to really highlight because Boeing and Airbus are two of the major giants in the commercial airjet industry. And to see them together partnering on something that's sustainable for the Earth is just amazing to see. I know we talked about it in a previous episode, but to see it really, 2020 or 2030 is really right around the corner when you think about it. So I'm excited to see where those next steps and how they're going to integrate into the fleets and things like that as we move forward.
Yeah, that's a good point, Rob. I think, for years, I've been to the Paris Air Show a few times, and for years, it's always been what's that next step in sustainability and just being more kind to our planet, right? And it's good to see more of these things where fuel was happening, wind noise was happening with all the turbine technology that's changing. And then fuel is the next on the list as they really try to figure out how to deal with the footprint that we're putting on the planet. So we're pleased to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's break down the Golden Dome architecture and its operations. And it's a real-time layered defense architecture.
So Rob, for our listeners new to missiles and missile defense, how would you describe the Golden Dome in one sentence?
The way I would describe it is that it's a fusion of space-based sensors, artificial intelligence, and layered interceptors that detect and destroy missiles in every phase of flight, and that includes boost, mid-course, and terminal.
So it's not just about shooting one missile down, right?
No, that's not at all. It's built to handle simultaneous salvos from hypersonic glide vehicles to cruise missiles to UAV swarms. And really here's 4-step process to really break it down. So step 1 is really around space-based early detection. And that's systems like Orb Shield and the NDSA, and they identify launches within seconds using infrared and radar data from LEO satellites. And then step 2 of this is based on the ground-based radar fusion. So that's platforms like the lower tier air and missile defense sensor. And then you have SPY-6 radar providing that 360-degree tracking. And then the data is sent to AI-powered battle management nodes connected through, JASC2. That's a lot of great technology moving forward.
So in a sense, it's like that's where the digital edge come in, right? And we talked about JASC2 a bunch of times in the past in our episodes, and it allows for the services to share the data across the domains in real time. What other steps you got going, Rob?
Yeah, so step 3 of this is the AI threat evaluation. So that's the algorithms that determine the trajectory, speed, and intent. And then the AI systems prioritize those threats and recommend which interceptor or system should respond.
We've walked through, space detection phase, and we've talked about what to do with that data that comes from the space, and then how AI is going to help with the decision making of that data. Now let's walk us through the actual when we see the boom. Walk us through the intercept phase.
Yeah, so that's step 4 of this process. So that's the layered intercept response. So the terminal high altitude area defense and the glide phase interceptor for the exo-atmospheric threats. So the Patriot, PAC-3, MSE, so the missile segment enhancement, and the MS-6, the standard missile 6 for endo-atmospheric targets. And then you have the directed energy weapons like high energy laser weapon system for the short range and drone threats. And after the shot, the system retrains itself and that's really the learning that the AI provides from the engagement to improve future responses.
Right. And that's that next level capability, right? It's not only just once it makes a shot, right? It's also looking at, okay, how can I learn from where this shot happened before even you get energy on target, right? And so that's taking that data, and that AI piece is going to be important.
Exactly.
What limitations do you got in that you'll see in that, Rob?
Yeah, so the limitations I see in this is a couple different ways. So you have the integration across, several branches is always a challenge. And you have the interoperability, the latency, and edge compute bandwidth that's still being tested. And I think 4 other key, limitation or challenges that I see for this technology is really around the technology readiness gaps. So really numerous untested or emerging technologies, especially in the space-based interceptors and lasers, must demonstrate viability and scalability. And then second, then you have the deployment complexity. So you have a NASA-style orbital constellations of interceptors that require a high launch cadence, precise orbital mechanics, and rapid positioning, and that requires a massive logistical support. And then, last 2 that I'm thinking about this is really the command and control fusion and also the industrial scale up and supply chains. And I know you'll get more into that later, DeWayne, but those are the things that I see as limitations and challenges.
Yeah, so it's also the way it's very advanced, but it's consistently evolving, right? And as me and you both been in this space for many years, we were engaged when it was just one type of system at a time, and you was just trying to upgrade that system and then everything that goes around it. This is like taking the whole kit and caboodle and pulling it together, right? And so what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about it, that's exactly the way I explain it. It's like a Star Wars dome effect. It's like anything that comes in this airspace, it thinks about, what type of interceptor and it needs to shoot it down, and then it takes the necessary actions to do that. But yeah, it's a decisive move away from that siloed defense systems approach. And one thing I also want to highlight here is the projected timeline. So, we walked through this is that the executive order was signed in January 2025 this year. The General Michael Gittin was appointed the program head by May 2025, and then the program aims to deliver by 2029 at the end of Trump's term. But the Pentagon is also saying that we're only going to demonstrate this at the end of 2028 once. But the CSIS notes also, development beyond 2029 is very likely. So it's a lot of things going on.
It's a stretch to demonstrate, particularly someone who's, we've seen it before, right? Particularly with these space-based interceptors, it takes you 4, 5, 6, 7 years to get something off the ground. And, it's a very aggressive schedule.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely ambitious, but that's the projections that we're seeing right now from what's been, communicated and released. Like I said, we'll see kind of how it develops over time and see the progress being made for the program. So I'm excited to see kind of where things go from this. But I know we gotta, we don't want to take too much time on the technical side of it. Let's discuss how this all is affecting the budget.
Excellent. So Rob gave us the technical side. Let's jump into the budget, where the rubber meets the road, right? So for FY25, the defense budget includes about $850 billion, which is about $10.4 billion to the Missile Defense Agency alone, which is not the only service agency that's going to be working in Golden Dome for sure. And in that 10.4, they got $3.2 billion for Homeland Defense and hypersonic threat deterrence, as well as another 1.1 towards directed energy weapons, such as Hellwiz that Rob talked about. And then the increased investment in space-based sensing and software-defined C2 systems as well.
So what companies are leading the charge, DeWayne?
All the usual names and a bunch of the few really popular ones that you hear in Wall Street now. You got Raytheon, RTX, obviously. You got the Orb satellites there, the LTAMDS radar that you talked about. There's some 6 interceptors, which I had the pleasure of working on myself during my career. Lockheed has the THAAD system and the fire control networks, as well as the glide phase interceptor development. Northrop Grumman has all the space-based ISR type activity, all the satellites that work in that stuff as well. They're on the glide phase interceptor as well, and then they do a lot of comms work. Boeing, you've got all the launch platforms and integration from airborne and the command modules. And then the 2 popular corporations that we hear a lot about now who's helping us to speed these things up, particularly with the data fusion, is like Palantir and Anduril. They're offering, real-time AI, battlefield operation systems and data fusion, and Anduril's also offering the unmanned vehicle perspective, particularly with how HSEA CCA would play into this activity as well.
Man, that's amazing. It's amazing to see all these companies contributing to something so, massively important for greater good of America. But this is kind of a side note, but DeWayne, do you see this as like the new defense primes of the future, including the Palantirs, Andurils, and maybe some others that are growing more and more in the industry?
Yeah, I do. But I also see like a lot of because of the speed to market that we are using, it's a lot of opportunities if for those mid and small businesses. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's also really an opportunity where, let's say, the investment community is coming in to help. And how can they help? As you know, these programs have huge development cycles, right? And huge investment supply chain cycles, and lead times that we have to do. So for example, and I'll talk about this coming up, right? You have these supply chains where you need these very high-end, long manufactured, long lead time materials, semiconductor, sensor type activities, things to keep a line moving. But if you're not on the contract, companies have to make these investments to get these smaller firms to get those critical key parts in. And, they don't work for free, right? Right?
No, of course not.
Right. And so, it's an opportunity for the investment community to come in as well, to play a part as well. So just moving towards that point, right? Like 10 years ago, all these decisions were being made, were all siloed, like we talked about, and everything wasn't as interoperable, right? Like it has to be now. It has to be connected. It has to be interoperable. It has to be on open source systems, things like that. And that's how business has changed. And then, like I talked about, from a supply chain and workforce perspective, companies are being incentivized to bring manufacturing back stateside. A lot of that's been happening in the news as you've been following. The president's going around the world to making sure, right, wrong, indifferent via the tariffs to make sure that we do what we can to reduce dependency on vulnerable supply chains for semiconductors and sensors and energetics and very rare metals, things like that. But we're also seeing the return of the industrial base retooling, right? And I talked about those small tech firms, ones and twos, who are now not built, they're built a different way. Silicon's Valley behind them, and they're meeting the demands of this like precision manufacturing and lithium ion power and then optical tech. And if when you think about that, Rob, there's an opportunity there too, right? It's an opportunity for small businesses that's out there, and really, really critical, right? It's from, we're talking about new subcontracting opportunities. And Rob, as everything is now, they try and put everything on a MTA or middle tier acquisition now. So yep. Less regulations, if you will, less barriers to cross to get some above the line. And they're using other funding vehicles with, the SBIRs, the Small Business Innovation Research Fund, and OTAs, other transaction authorities type contracts to really bring in those cyber, small AI, and manufacturing businesses and innovation to bring to the marketplace. Because this is critically important, because all of these big behemoths that I talked about earlier, they're very big and very entrenched, and they may not have the speed that we need to get to this Golden Dome thing, but also it's important from that perspective. Your thoughts, Rob?
No, yeah, I think, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you talked about the kind of the investment community. Like you talking about the VCs, the private equity companies that are, investing heavily in this industry. Like, as you can see, like Palantir's and Anduril's, name being on this list of like major defense primes for a huge initiative from the government. I mean, that alone should tell you is like the government is looking to advance the technology as quickly as it can. And that's where the OTAs and the other transaction investment opportunities for those, smaller mid companies to really make a name for themselves in the industry, that is going to be key for the technology moving forward. So it's not about, how big your company is, it's what technology are you bringing to the table for, the government and these big defense programs as everything moves forward. So I'm excited to see where things turn. I think from a supply chain standpoint specifically, the tariffs have had impact on the industry itself. I think a lot of the defense companies are still working through that. But like I said, it is an opportunity for other companies to have that dual sourcing, secondary subcontract opportunities being available for things that are going to be more state-sized for, massive programs like this.
Yeah, and then just to wrap up from a strategic perspective, right? It's, this is just not about just a big defense program, right? It's a big defense program. It's definitely going to help for an ongoing threat that we're dealing with to protect the homeland, right? But it's also a big, huge digital transformation project, right? It's a huge manufacturing investment project that's happening, which is transforming. It's an investment project. You talked about a Silicon Valley is probably most in my career, if I've seen it, is the most engaged ever at the Pentagon, and they're there, right? I was just there this past week, and you see these Silicon Valley guys running around. The building is really interesting, with real funding and real risk and real implications, right? And these programs, at least from us in the industry, are driving demand for the hybrid talent type people, like engineers who can do system integration, software experts who think in defense, right? They have that defense, that's its own language, right? And then program managers who can move real fast, but also understand and DoD compliance, right? And so as a leader, you should be asking the questions. If you're in here and you're one of our listeners that's out there, you should be really figuring out, well, where does my company fit into this value chain, right? And are we certified and got the right partnerships and technology that play in this ecosystem? And then, as any company is always worried about, is do we have a workforce that reflects where that innovation is going, not just where it's been? And that's just where we get caught up, right?
Yeah, exactly. And from the talent side, I'm looking at, you mentioned the program manager that can move fast and stay compliant, but that diversity of thought. So I think it leans heavily on those program managers that have like the major development background. So it's like development in the autonomous space, AI, cyber, and all those realms where you got to think outside, what are the normal parameters that you need to, abide by. but is, thinking on your feet, taking obstacles and making them move away or moving them for your team, and making sure that you're being clear, concise with customers, your subcontractors, and your team to be sure everyone's aligned and understanding paths moving forward. So I think that is going to be critical from the talent side as we move forward. Like I said, I'm just so excited to see where things go.
Yeah, the fusion of the digital and the kinetic is here, and Golden Dome is the proving ground.
And today we've explored the vision, the architecture, and the real world mechanics of the Golden Dome. And that's a system that turns multi-domain awareness into active defense.
Yeah, and from the budget and industry perspective, this is not a one-year flash. This is a transformation change in how we fund and deploy layered defense. Some of the takeaways, right? Golden Dome integrates space, AI, and missile defense in one connected architecture. The budget priorities are reflecting or going to continue to reflect a long-term commitment to the layered real-time defense. And contractors, the supply base, and the talent all need to evolve to meet that challenge.
So DeWayne, what's been on your radar lately?
I actually been connecting with some founders in the defense tech space. We've just finished up speaking at the 24th Aerospace and Defense Manufacturing R&D Summit in DC. I thought it went well. And then just getting ready for the summer, brother. Trying to rest up, get some rest in. That's important. What about you?
Yeah, I think it was a great opportunity speaking at that, summit. I think, no, it was the first for me. I know you've been there a few times, but it was amazing to see the talent and the energy in the room. And that was really based off of, everything focused on aerospace and defense and how things are shifting in the industry. So it was good to see from a, leadership, business, technical standpoint, how things are really going to be progressing. And, those key partnerships are had in those type of rooms. So it was really good to be a part of those conversations and move forward. But for me, I know, summer's in full swing right now with the kids home, finishing up our house. So we're actually making a big move next month. So I'm ready to be moved into the new house, and everything's going to be rolling from there.
It's always an adventure. Good to hear. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and share the podcast on all streams.
And for more technology, more leadership, more stories ahead, stay safe and stay sharp.